The first man to lift a rock was probably alone doing it. He might have been curious to see what was under it, but deeper under, inside himself, he knew a tentative truth. There could be no good reason to lift this particular rock at this particular time. My grip is where all the energy is, back and forth between my will and the solid thunder of the bar. The world's destiny rests exactly there at that intersection of contradictory efforts. The man who lifted the rock felt in his back the rock tighten its grip on the earth. The back of such a man strains against heavy weight, but more so against his own will to contract those largest of muscles to propel his wish into reality. The man who lifted the rock made a face so hard and so red that much of the arts of living are devoted to preserving or enacting the drama behind that face, alive and pulsating. All the reasons to lift a heavy weight vanish as soon as the weight begins to rise. By the time the weight reaches a dead point of rest, just before it is finally nailed, there is one very good reason to stop. The eternal uselessness of humanity smacks every cell in your bloodstream. We always give up. It is the last gesture, having had heaven to return and again. Poetry and lifting great weight is a futile, wonderful murmuring in the universe to avoid refuge. It is suspended in its own question, located nowhere that can be removed or found. It emerges from the unfinished human in us to take a stab at the mystery of us here. It was raining under her face. There was wind in the room, and she broke daylight for you. Her locomotive heart blew steam, and I held her as your head split her, and you burst our ignorance with celebration which you came to own. All elements changed that day, positive to negative to positive. The planets moved closer in awe. Nothing but wind, amorous wind. Don't you find the wind abundant and nutritious and as alone as you in it? We were always alone. Follow your hunches about yourself, my son. If you think you were born by a virgin, commence with that. If you think you were born by a wind, if you think you were wind in another lifetime, then you were wind. And you must look anyone in the eye and say, I mean it, I was wind. And understand by that to what degree it's in your hands. When I'm reading poetry in front of a group, I feel flexed. I feel that my spirit, the muscularity of my own spirit is there for people, and that really I'm expressing my own originality about being human. I sweat, I'm breathless, I speak in a truncated way, stylish way. I like that about lifting weight as well. Those two activities of the will that happen make me feel very tall, very strong. When I'm lifting, you can see that in my body. You can see that in my posture. You can see that in my eyes. And I think people see that as well. That poetry has a heart. And reading poetry is exciting, is music, is song, and is a very liberating experience. And in the same way that when you're moving great weight around, there is an exhaustion that you feel, and it's beautiful. I am surrounded by a ton or two of man's rigor, peeling off into the organ moon as we always did. Most people have a problem juxtaposing the role of the poet with that of the strong man. That's a 19th century phenomenon. The strong man was a 300-pound beer-drinking macho man who moved a big barrel of beer from one side of the tavern to the other. The poet was a quiet, dainty, fragile person, a romantic, an intellectual. My sense of language is that it's muscular, a physical thing. Poetry for me is very much a gymnastic exercise of the spirit. My poetry and a poetry reading is something that the people seem to enjoy. It's visceral, it's physical. I think I take them on a little bit of a trip in their minds with language. The experience of being on vacation and sending a postcard home, and the postcard gets there after you return. Poem script for voice intent on disappearing. Regard again, protect the hint on the print of the postcard. Keek bentide, ten beak kide, hen neek side, side nen heek nine, sen heek side, hen neek hide, nen seek hide and seek. Regard again, protect the hint on the print of the postcard. Go to linger on your lip. I could not have possibly gotten there. Poetry is a roller coaster ride. It's a surprise. It's a loud subway. It's falling into meaning rather than framing that meaning and coming toward it. It's exciting. Regard again. Protect the hint on the print of the postcard. Go to linger on your lip. I could not have possibly gotten there. The lamppost does move the drunken bastard. The drunken bastard moves the lamppost. The moves lamppost the drunken bastard. Posed the dester dove the prunken pamp lost. Lows the pester dove the brunken damp post. Does pa pester the dove and ramp boast. Bamp dove the rastard boast the lamp. Yes. Yes, the dove is less the amp post, the dove is less the amp post, and love is in the lamp post, and love is a postcard. Tell one, where am I from? There are worldwide underground systems that publish poets, fictionists, and visual artists. Some of these people publish magazines and books that are 50 to 100 issues or copies at a time. Some publish a few thousand at a time, but the criterion has always been its own excellence. Even the most successful poets of our time cannot rely on the publication of their poetry for their livelihood. Probably the life of the poet as someone who writes poetry exclusively is something that the 20th century is over with. I've always felt that it's not up to anybody but me to get my work out. We can't rely on the commercial outlets to sustain ourselves. We've got to create our own avenues of access. When I got to be 40 years of age, something happened in my eyes. Colors began to pull my head in many directions, and working with paint excited me. So I began to do some visual work and tried to create an artistic synthesis of some of the problems that I work out in my writing. I began to do that by combining painting with photographs, by actually painting on photographs. The studio is very much of a playground, very much a private world of the imagination, has its own strengths and exhaustions, and I feel very alone. There are so many images that take shape and have texture. I enjoy the cans, the tape, and the acrylics, and the oil, and the Q-tips. I like the paintbrushes and the accoutrements, the instruments of visual art, getting the paint on myself, and becoming part of the whole mess. I enjoy tacking things on the wall in no apparent order and suddenly seeing that there is some sequence. In my art, A multiplicity of forces converge. It's at work in both the poetry and the painting. Things are happening in both the foreground and the background. I like to see what happens when the focus is blurred. Around the inside of the house, too, are examples of design, examples of intentional art, not just the haphazard beauty that occurs as human beings live in their households, but I like to think of every part of our house as having some statement, some focus, something that leaves an impression to anyone that comes after that I was here. My kitchen is a kind of studio, too. I enjoy the different stages of baking. Like making a poem, or working out, or painting, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's a sequence, an evolution of the act itself. In almost everything that I do, there's some feeling that I have that it's ancestral and that it's primitive. And I have that feeling that I'm doing something that human beings have been doing for thousands of years. It's something that feels good when you're doing it, it smells good, it's sensual, it's physical. I keep all the ingredients on hand all the time so that baking becomes a natural part of what I do every day. Another way of putting it is that all the ingredients and parts of my life mix freely. The office is a place that I go to during the day, just as the kitchen and just as I do with the gym or my own studio. I like the movement. I come into being when I move from one place to another. I'm at my best when I'm busy and when I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do but leap into it. I'm amazed at how many things can be accomplished, how many thousands of poems and paintings can be done, how many dozens of books can be written, how many different lifetimes you can cram into one lifetime. Working gives my art some substance. It's about family, it's about people, it's about failure, it's about rejection, about motivation. It's about going to work every day. We are salesmen in the 30s with belted luggage. We have families back home. It's Thursday, January 24th, Indianapolis to Cincinnati. The brain is 1/3 fat, 2/3 extravagant gold sash. You are therefore never alone. Angels are deft and spidery, drawn to drapes and lampshades, sit like parakeets on our shoulders or shadows. Unholy teenage monkeys don't want perspective. Extreme behavior is in our hearts, standing out in the cold between a satellite dish and a double vision. I want to leave behind a message that life is a celebration, that it's up to us. And I want my death to be eloquent too, like a poem, and as powerful. I might go in a fire. I'd try to get out through the windows. I might go in a boiler explosion, parts of me flying like confetti. I might just go in my sleep, but I strongly doubt it. I suppose it'll happen by accident. I'll drive too fast for conditions. I'll run up a flight of steps 2 at a time and clutch my chest. I'll die slowly with no one around. Or I'll be waiting again for someone to show up. I'll be momentarily expecting help on the way. I'll be electrocuted, though I do steer clear of fuses, outlets, and circuit breakers, but it's possible. An electric wire will fall to the roof of my car, and one hand will be touching the dash, in which case the radio is focal, the music is what I'll hope for is exactly right. Whatever controls you can reach in such moments are really the whole story. I know it won't happen by anything falling on me. I know, for instance, it won't be that quick. There'll be a lot of time for the skid to register into something else, to think it out, to hear the crash against the wall, to assess it. It won't happen, therefore, in my sleep. It won't happen along with anyone else. I want very much to know that it won't be a part of a larger death when it happens. I want it to happen to me. I want the full stage of its insolence. I don't want anybody afterward thinking it wasn't mine. I don't want to share it. I don't want witnesses with their perceptions. I want my death to speak for itself, to have happened in the coincidence of myself, to be for anyone else nothing they could walk away with. When they leave me, they will come no closer to cracking the nut. But you, my son, I want you to dig and to pierce it together and to look in the sky if you have to, into the earth, into anything you do. Practice, my son, so you'll be that calm, so you'll be to that degree prepared, which we can't, but to let out an expectation to already be free of it, to make it mean your death and not an aspect of some other orbit whose testimonies clog our easy exits. Do you believe I am no longer constructed for you to touch? Do you honestly think I am gone from you, ever? There are silences you'll come to and stop short. The evening air is chilly. The waves come in. The vast territory before your first memory of it. You are as deep in it as anyone who has ever lived. You are on such ground that I might be, and able to speak such language, to grow. I too, my son, to touch you through your skin in which I last.